is, haha. Oh man, remember walking into the restaurant for a communal event. Therefore, you weren't ready to eat, so you had some appetizers brought to you by a waiter. Seriously, what is up with that? Everybody sits there and digs into those fucking chips, right? Unless you got a phone to play with or something. Man, that's a funky little root mass. Root mass. Little root mass. Root mass. Why don't you back that tractor up? Remember that one, old pit guys? Man, I gotta not start this because I'm gonna want to get all of them out. You talked about running a weeder through here and then spraying, but I don't have any string handy and I don't want to dog Walmart too much, but you guys have certainly not wasted inventorying or something over there. They're down to some strings of 65. Now they could be trying to tell me something, kids. They could say this 65 is all you need. You're out here whipping around with this big 95 shit. That's why it seems difficult. Well, I've done some 80. And honestly, it's the length of string that's spinning that I feel is down to these little, hi, don't hurt your toe, don't hurt your shin. What the fuck is this? It feels like I'm painting this yard or something with a damn Bob Ross with a happy brush. So I'll be, I need to learn some lingo probably. Let's see, the guy that was recommending serrated string to me, and I was kind of on a budget and I was about to go whacking at concrete with it anyways. He recommended one of the As Seen on TVs. I do see a quality in those things. See what I'm doing right now, I just got the top part of the head in place, the part that you load and put it on there with. It has a tendency to fly off and you have to mow the yard to figure out where it's at. So, I just tie a string in my, 8 or 10 inch length, got a knife to only has one. You need to get a sharper knife or better serration. I know, I got a fillet knife over there. Well, that's what you need to fillet your hand. That's what the guy said yesterday. And sorry for any sarcastic tone that came off. Thought he was being helpful, That's one thing, kids. Has this many fans. They say a sharp knife is more dangerous than a blunt one. Now that's a general statement when you're talking about hacking through stuff where force is going to be applied. The more force you apply, the more likely you are to be sort of off balance or pop through the more than you meant to cut type of thing. So that's why there's emphasis on a sharper blade being safer. Yeah, I think that looks pretty snazzy. One more little sprinkle here, non-reptilians. That would really touch it up nicely. So, the electric person. I don't know. I get the sense there's going to be a lot of stuff in the next 100 years which blows out the technology that we've known. It does suck to think that we're getting phones and shit that are running on a power source which is substandard and known better than. I don't know if it's going to be electrical, magnetic, some kind, electromagnetism is probably going to be. By the way, kids, we need to get in there and dig around and at least see if we can find people supporting the narrative that Hitler doesn't have UFOs, didn't have UFOs, wasn't working on UFOs, flying discs, alternate propulsion, magnetic stuff. Then you get into like krill energy or whatever. I don't know what's up with that, but it's just something I didn't pop those out to be sensationalist. I just, whenever we're talking about, when you're having it out with the parents or something, about how this is all bullshit, I'm not going to play along. They had fucking UFOs back in 1943, and, the Nazis have just moved through here. I don't know who exactly is now going to be if that thing shifts, the leverage point you need to kind of provide oomph in the meantime. Give yourself a purpose, eliminating the Jews is what Hitler was about in conjunction with world domination. Well, maybe he just wouldn't have had enough energy, enough incentive without that ethnic human. Maybe he was a lot, he was seeing something similar to what we see in terms of indiscriminate life placement, that sort of stuff. Well, rather than being as general about it as saying, the mothers, as we acquire technology, need to be a little less productive of humans, and then you'll get to a point where you're able to do a lot of fun stuff, and maybe things will even balance out so that if you really genuinely want a kid and to have a fun life, to share what you know about life and all that stuff, I'm sure is the shit people come up with to tell you whenever they're a fucking replicating mammal. That's what it is. That's their only purpose. I'm sure it would feel pretty fucking empty. But maybe in his instance, he didn't take it that deep. He didn't think about it that far. Of course, we know there's supposedly the Jews. If you go back, I could be mixing up a couple things, but Jews are, on some level, largely held as child molesters or something. Classically. Now, I think it goes more into ancient times, and again, we've heard all this on YouTube, so it could be fucking bullshit to get you thinking about the opposite or something. But supposedly there was kind of a Bible back in the day where you could do whatever the fuck you want with a kid up to the age of 3. I don't know if they just felt like you didn't form memories before then, so it was okay to, like, they were talking about, molesting them. But at the same time, I think they were talking about wiping them, whatever that might mean. There could have been a commodity aspect to human life at a time whenever there was less technology, less infrastructure. People might have been starting to recognize humans as a thing to have around. If you got some wives, well, you can produce some kids who are on your side, presumably. I don't know. But that is one thing we know that the Nazis hold as a major tenet, is anti-child molestation. Now, that's kind of obvious whenever we're just straight talking about abusing something. You know, straight up using something, placing undue stress on an undeveloped part of a person's body, you know. Sociologically, we won't get all into it, but let's face it, there are some aspects of legal age or whatever that are just kind of blurry. But I don't think there's any, I just can't imagine how you would find something that doesn't even have sexual organs, doesn't even have a mature physiology, you know. I don't know. I don't know what would be up with that. Anyhow, we know that the Nazis hold that as a major tenet, a major motivator for wanting to rule the world or whatever, for wanting not to be infiltrated by other races. The chances are that whoever we're calling the Jews now, half of those people probably they haven't even heard of this old teachings that says you can marry a woman by age 3 or something, or do whatever the fuck you want. You know, you can, well, who knows? But what I'm saying, kids, whenever I talk about the Nazis are running through here, it's difficult because it's not the Nazis. It could be a different entity which was using the Nazis at the time to move leverage towards an epic where I don't know what goes on here soon, relatively soon, perhaps 100 years, 20 years, whatever. But it sure would seem as though major turmoil is afoot, according to what we're hearing. Which is kind of like, you're telling me I don't fucking plan well for my future, and you're fucking releasing goddamn tubes and shit telling everybody it's gonna blow up. Why don't you goddamn avert this disaster? But it's like, I'm sure it's something that, you know, on some grander level has to happen, because we can't fade from existence, goddammit. Or we won't. That's where it's sort of defendable from my perspective, is if we can't count on everybody not to have kids and die off. Therefore, there's a high likelihood that groups of people, particularly whenever you got races and stuff like that to blame, would take entire swaths of humanity and put them into slavery, put them into bondage, basically. And so that would be why, perhaps, that would be the only real justifiable denial of doing the dodo, saying, hey, you know, I know you got a lot of stuff built up to see you through life, and most of you, or a lot of you, are merely a piece of, livestock, a piece of a larger group, which is actually there to serve a different purpose, but you get all kinds of little fun stuff for your personal experience. Sorry to wreck your parade, your meanings of life and shit, but let's face it, folks. This goes back to Noah and the wood drill. You really want to end human suffering, you detonate a bomb in the middle of the fucking earth, blow the whole goddamn thing up at once. Nobody has to suffer too long, you know, hopefully. I don't know how that would work. You'd have chunks of the earth which, you know, they say you can. I think they say you can. What is it you can do on planets that you would think you can't? So maybe there's a certain level of. Maybe you need oxygen, obviously. I don't know. It's just an interesting thought. What if you blew the whole thing out and it was just, 3 or 4 big chunks and a bunch of dust and everybody's done within an hour? Congratulations, you just ensured that no more human suffering will take place. And I'm sorry, in a homeostasis model, it's the best thing for you. Really helps me anyways, to reaffirm how much of what life is what's positive about life is oftentimes just averting negatives, And then there's the stimulation of unknowns and helping folks out and all that stuff in the meantime. But by and large, doing the dodo, I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea for you to have that sort of grasp on life. Sorry. Anyhow, we got down that road because whenever I go saying the Nazis are running through America now, well, there's plenty to support that model as being a little less than fanatical or heretical. Remember, kids, the Germans, by and large, supposedly didn't know about what the Nazis were actually doing in terms of Jewish death camps and all the fucked up experiments they supposedly did on people. See, that's where, like I say, what they did was wrong in those instances. When you're talking about suffering humans, ain't no fucking excuse for that shit. You don't do that. I don't give a fuck how bad, how mean they may have been. You do not extend the suffering of anything on purpose. That's fucking absolute bullshit. So, if you needed to get some experimentation done, would it be advisable to cloak yourself within an entity which is so terrible and so bad, yet you can get the information out of it and start up a NASA program, whatever? I think there's plenty to be said for the idea that either the Masons, again, we've got all these terms. I'm sure we wouldn't have these terms unless they want us to have them, but the Templars, which they would relate, and they'd concur, I think, from what I've heard, with the idea of extending human suffering as being a real bullshit. Supposedly they killed everybody one day, but a few of them at least, they kept them on a rotisserie and, made it a slow death. That's not cool. No way is that okay. That's beyond sociopathic as I hold it. That's beyond indifference. That's just wrong. But more and more kids, we're seeing that there seems to be an acceptable amount of suffering for humans from a larger perspective. And it really does. It takes your individual importance out of things. Because like I said, I can get real mad, real pissed off that things are going to be cool in 1,000 years. And that my life really could be stimulating and exciting and fun. And all that we know to be life is going to go, well, that was some controlled caveman days, But that's kind of silly. Certain procession has to take place, and it's silly for me to get upset about that, you know, because I think about things like the guy from the Beastie Boys dying. He's somebody who I think pushed this new order a lot, or they are, you know. They're universally accepted, and it's just fucked up to me and Prince that those guys are that awesome of people or whatever, and that they can just die, that they're just a part of this procession. That's fucked up to me. Certainly we throw out the celebrity dogging for a minute to say, you know, that's just weird to me. It does make you wonder, do they get to come back to life or something, you know? Obviously that's probably kind of silly, but I just, right now we're at this place where we can recognize that there may be, I may be taking for granted that I'm capable of comprehending, or maybe have been suggested certain things to even observe that this is going on. But it just seems to me that if a large entity which can't tell people what's going on and allowing people to suffer. I saw some dudes in a life raft yesterday. I don't know what had happened, but I guarantee the elites didn't come in with their helicopters. Some guy came in and asked what language they spoke, and he said, "Stay where you are, be still. We will get everybody on the big boat." The whole thing was just lying on the edge with guys hanging off the edge. The whole center was full of water and dead women. Some of them, they said, alive an hour ago. Now that, I don't know exactly what happened there, but shit like that going on, I don't think it can successfully pull itself through. The survivors or whatever, if the survivors and the people who don't flip out and go mad in the transition did so by adhering to a large entity, a large grouping, which can't at any point say, okay, well, here's what's going on, don't get too pissed off, but we've got like 12 or 13% to roll through here, this is what's going on. Well, I'm sorry, man, I just can't reconcile that, and I'm sure it would be a lot easier if I had, you know, some career that I was trying to get forward, and I found out these things were going on as I was finding that out, you know, as I was finding success or something in that regard. It's where, like I say, I could be seen as being the hypocritical one who's talking about life placement and everybody knowing better. People know better than to put too many people into situations for the whole amount of time, you know. Then I think it kind of balances back out. Anyhow, I've got to go ahead to clear this whole deal out because there's some daylily or something that will grow back. So I'm going to whack this thing out real quick, get all the stumps out, probably put the mower over it on a high setting, and be finishing up here real quick, since this is housed this many. I'm going to show you the pickle fork trick. Pickle fork trick. The pickle fork. The pickle fork crescent. Alright, where are you, pickle fork? Now, of course, this isn't always going to be applicable, but it's kind of a handy little trick. And it's kind of difficult to describe. It's like this lady was trying to describe to me about how much edging and weed eating she has to do. You can't do it. That's why, like I say, I don't do over-the-phone appraisals or estimates. How does that look? Pretty good. Okay. It's about a 20, I think. I had one socket on it. Or one wrench or something. And it was making me mad. Making me need another tool. And the reason, by the way, I find this sort of noteworthy, as I said, Grandma doesn't like presidential candidate conventions, so we ended up watching How's This Mini, and if it didn't come through, dude was basically just showing off all his tools. Pickle forks used for separating tie rod ends. It's a little bit brutal. It will cut that boot on one that you had you need to take it back off because you've got this thing to replace now on warranty, of course, but you're gonna rip your boot. Pretty simple, guys. So if you're ever in need of a little mini MacGyver action, this thing's going to take you right on up to probably 22, 23 millimeter, standard or fractional. So pretty nifty. Black & Decker, you did all right with these nippers. Oh yeah, I forgot. Did we not get through the? I don't think we did. Well, pretend this stick is significantly larger, and you're about to put a bunch of force on it, or kind of like you're too sharp a knife. Learned that trick just the other day. Simple as it may be, it's gonna potentially come in handy. Potentially keep me from putting half a stick I just broke into my damn jowl. Okay. It's crunch time here on How's This Mini. How's This Mini? We're gonna get into it. We're gonna finish up everything we discussed today, and I think it's gonna be okay. How's This Mini? How's This Mini?